In a previous video, back when Affinity was still Affinity Photo 2, I made a video on how you could create a photo frame. I also made one on how you could put borders around photos. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do this using Canva. In Canva, there's a difference between a frame and a border, and I'm going to illustrate both in this video. Here's the home page where we discover your year in design. I'll click on the whiteboard so I can create a new blank place to show you my designs. I'm going to try to incorporate a lot of mini lessons into this to show you how to use some new things in Canva, and I also need to learn how to use them too. So this is good for both of us. So now we have our whiteboard open. Now I'll go over here and click on Elements, because this is where we're going to find our frames. And in order to find our frame, I'm going to type in frames into the search box. And now we have our search box opened up, and so I'm going to bring in two frames. I'm going to bring in a square frame, and I'm going to bring in a round frame. And I'm going to make these a little smaller because it gets crowded in here if they're not small enough. Okay, now these two frames, what they're going to do is they're going to crop the picture that you bring into the frame. That's why you have to have the frame first before you bring the picture in. So another thing that comes up because of this is that you need to have the appropriate picture that will fit into the frame. So in order to get my picture, I'm going to go up here and click Uploads. That's because I'm going to get a picture from that is mine. I'm not going to use any of the elements, well, not right now anyway, that are in Canva. And I also want to show you how you can upload your own stuff to Canva. So what you would do is you come over here and click Upload, and then go up here to Upload Files, and then search for the picture. And in my case, it's going to be my great-great-grandparents. So now they are in my upload files area. Now notice that we have images, videos, and folders. Here are all the images I've uploaded, and notice that there are not a lot of them. Over here you have the videos I've uploaded. These are the only two videos I've done. I use them to create some intros to my videos. And then right here you have folders. I don't really have enough single uploads to warrant creating a folder, so I haven't done that yet. So we're going to go back over here, then take my image and drag it over to the square frame, and notice that it crops it, and not in a good way. You cannot move the picture behind the frame like you can in some things, where the frame and the picture are independent of each other. They're not independent of each other for this particular types of frames. The frames that have the clouds and the meadows and the sky in the back, those are the ones that are going to do that. So the only way you can get around that, unless you just want him to be completely cropped out, and that wouldn't be a good thing, you have to resize your frame. Now resizing the whole thing is just going to make this bigger, so that's not going to help. So what you have to do is to pull it down, and you're going to have a rectangle instead of a square frame. So that's not that bad, but sometimes in some photos you use, that might matter to you. So that's something that you need to think about. So let's take a look at what happens when we pull the image into the circular frame. When you pull the image into the circular frame, the same thing happens. It crops it in a circle, and so the only way you're going to get around that is to click on the frame and pull it down until this guy shows. And actually, to me, I like that. I mean, that doesn't look that bad. This would be perfect for one of those old-timey oval frames, if you already cropped it off like that and then you want to put it in a frame on a dresser or something like that. Now look at this. This is Ask Canva. I don't want to ask Canva anything, but for whatever reason, I can't get this thing to leave me alone, and I can't get it to move somewhere else. I really don't want it to leave me alone because it's got the trash can and the lock, where you can lock your images in position on the whiteboard and so on. But there is really no way I can move this stupid thing out of the way. So the only way around that is if I move this down or make it smaller. So I guess it's one of those things that you just have to put up with. Now that we have the circular frame, we're going to look at some fancy frames, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. We want fancy frames for our lovebirds, and these have been cropped already, and now I'm going to show you some frames where you're not going to be doing that. So I'm going to go over here to Elements, and we already have the frames, and I'm going to go down here. Instead of using these frames, and down here, look at these mock-ups. This is the same thing. If they have the cloud scene and the meadow scene, that means that you're going to need to put in the frame first, pull the picture in, and it's going to crop it to wherever it wants to crop it. So I'm going to move down here, and we're going to look under graphics, and there are some interesting frames in here. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to use this frame that has the black trim around it. So I'm going to click on it and pull it in, and uh-oh, what did we do? Well, what we did was, this is a type of frame that's going to try to snap into whatever frame is there. So what do we do now? Well, first thing we have to do, I mean, we can't do anything. It's all one thing now. We need to back out, and if you want to use this black frame, this is how you do it without going through that aggravation of it trying to crop itself into your picture. What you do is you pull it over and keep your cursor outside of the picture, because the cursor is what's going to determine if it's going to snap or not. And that's one thing that you need to remember. Then once you have that, you can, on the outside, you can resize your frame to where it will resize itself around the picture. And you can get whatever type of effect you're going for. And what I want is like a black frame with a white halo around it. Now you've got to be careful about pulling it in, because if you try to resize it this way, you're going to lose your black border. So you just need to, depending on how close you want to get it, you just need to pull it in there and then pull it around and put it in there until you get the effect that you want. So once you get that the way you want, we can click out of that and see the effect we have, and that's kind of an interesting look. Although I'm not sure I would put a frame of this type around a picture that was taken in 1906. So it's not, I guess, period appropriate. Is that what you want to say? Okay, now let's take a look at borders. To look at borders, we want to click on the picture that we want to put the border around. And the border is not like the frame. It's like the border that I did in Affinity, but this is done in a different way. If you want to put a border around this circular picture, all you have to do is to click on this. This is the borders icon, even though it says stroke style. So you click on stroke style, and right now this means that there's no border around it. So in order to put a border around it, you can either use a solid one or a dotted one or whatever you want to do. We're going to do a solid one, and then in order to see it, we have to increase the stroke rate, and see how that's putting a border around our picture. So I'm going to put the stroke weight about 9, so that's going to be good enough for me, and click out of that. And notice now we have our border, but our border is black. I don't want a black border, but it's the default. Black is the default for our border. So how are you going to change it? Change the color if you want to. Well, you go up here and click on this donut, which is the stroke color. So we click on the stroke color and you get all these little colors in the left side box where you can click on them and change the color. So that looks a little better than that black, although, well, that looks better. I think I'm liking this one. You can use all sorts of colors down here, even though they look really terrible like that one, or gradients like that one. In this case, well, that gradient doesn't look too bad, but I don't think a gradient is really appropriate for this particular border. So I'm going to go back up and put my solid brown, it's called gray orange, I guess that's what it's called, but my light brown or medium brown border around this, my couple, and then I'm going to leave the border like that. Now let me add another page so we can take a look at another type of frame. I want to do this because I want to show you how to add pages on the whiteboard in Canva. So all you have to do is to go down here, click on pages, and these thumbnails will come up. So there's the page we're using right now, and when you add a page, you're going to get a blank page on the whiteboard where you can do some more work. Now what I'm going to do is I want to get some of these fancy frame mock-ups in here, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. So I've got graphics, recommendations, mock-ups, that's what I want. Over here in mock-ups, these are sort of like fancier frames that snap. So there's all sorts of cool frames you can use. You can use that one. And that's one of them. Let's bring in a couple. Let's do that one with the hearts. And you can use, let me see, they have some kind of boring ones. We use, there's that one, and then we can resize it and so on. So once you have the frames there, all you have to do is go out and get the picture that you're going to snap in there. So that's what we have to do next. So we'll go to Elements, and I'm going to bring in Puppy, because these types of frames probably are not period appropriate for my great-great-grandparents. So we're going to do a puppy. So the first one, let's see what our puppy looks like if he is in this one. Okay, maybe. Are we not going to get our puppy in there? Oh, there we go. I didn't pull him in. So it has to think a little bit, and then there's our puppy. If we don't like that one, then we can get rid of him, and we can pull this guy in. Well, let's see what this guy looks like. Oops, he's big. Okay, so we just have to put him over and let's see what he looks like. He actually looks like his paws are kind of stepping on the frame. So you can experiment around with these frames, and then let me see what other dogs do we have in here. I had one with a sleeping dog that I really liked. Let's see if he's in here. If you want to see them all, you can just click on See All. And I like this one, so we'll put him over here. And let's see what he looks like. And he fits into our frame. This wasn't accidental. This was the one that I experimented on when I was doing my trial run. So that's how I know he fits. I was just curious what this one looked like. So you can use these mock-ups if you can find a picture to fit them. And as you can see, if you use the graphics that are already in here, it's really not that hard. I mean, I would have liked for this one to be smaller, but it's really not that bad. So this is like a specialized, a fancy frame that also crops your image. Okay, now I need to add another page because the last thing we're going to look at are some frames that don't crop the image. And to do that, I'm going to have to go back and get my grandparents and bring them back in here. I only need one of them. Notice I'm bringing in my grandparents first. And we can get rid of this just by clicking pages. So that will, if you want to make that smaller, that's how you do that. If you want to bring it back up, then you click pages again. So there you can see all the pages, click it again, and they go away. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now I'm going to make this smaller because I want to take a look at some of these fancy frames. There are some in here that are sort of interesting, and they don't crop your image, but you're going to make sure that you have a picture that fits the frame, or have a picture where it kind of really doesn't matter. So there's the frames, and notice I X'd out what said photos because it's only showing the photo frames. If I X that out, it will show all the frames. It will show these frames, it'll show my mock-ups, it'll show my graphics, it'll show my photo frames, and all those other types of things. Now right here, you have a big frame that will not crop the image. So that means that you can pull it in on top of your image and then just resize it to fit. The nice thing about this is it fits really nicely because the frame is elongated, and the parts that are hidden in the photo, they really don't matter. So you can do that one, and then there's your frame for this particular picture. There are some other interesting frames in here that you can use. We can, if we don't like that one, and this is why I didn't want to get rid of Ask Canva, because this is where the trash bucket is. We can bring in this one, and here we have a simpler frame, depending on your taste on these old-timey pictures. And this particular frame isn't exactly the same dimensions, but it's good enough to where if you just make it smaller and move it around, it will fit your picture perfectly. So there are all sorts of frames in here that you can use. There's our black frame again. A lot of these, what I call the old-timey frames, fancy frames and stuff like that. Down here you have magic recommendations. This little guy tries to tell you what you should, based on, I guess, what I picked, or what the picture is, what it recommends. So let's see all of them, and let's see what we have. We have all sorts of interesting things down here where we can't, if we want things to be a little bit simpler, let's get rid of this. And we can try this one. So here we have a plain wood frame, and we can just resize it down. Now keep in mind, the skinnier your frame, the bigger the chance it's not going to fit your picture. So there you go. And I actually like this one the best. I'm not a big fan of really, really fancy frames, even on paintings, quite frankly, or old pictures. So for me, this one would be good. Okay, now you should be able to explore Canva and find some frames that fit your own designs. And I encourage you to do that. Now, we have to put this stuff somewhere that would be in a folder. In my previous videos, I already had photos for my save files, but not one for this one. So I never really showed you how to make a folder for new stuff. Okay, so what you do is this has been saving itself all during this time. Remember, if we go to File, and to prove it to you, if we go to File, Save, it'll save all changes saved. So what we want to do is we want to make a folder for this, so we need to go over here to Projects. This is where we're going to do that. And before I do the folder, I am going to give this a name. I don't want this to be called Untitled Design and Whiteboard, so I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it Frames and Borders. So now we've got frames and borders. Make sure I spelled it correctly. and it's showing you the design that we already had. Okay, now we need to, there are no folders for frames or borders because I already showed you the folders I had and this isn't one of them. So what I need is I need a new folder for this, my design. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and remember we're in projects. And when you click on the project icon, you will see create folder down here, and you are going to press the plus sign. And then our name for it is going to be frames and borders. So our folder name is going to be the same as the file name. I don't think that really matters. Okay, if you're doing this along with a committee for your work and all that, here's a place where you can do that, but I'm never going to do that. Now once I've created my folder, I'm going to continue, and then my frames and borders have been, the folder has been created. So all I have to do is to move my project into that folder, and the way I will do that is to go to File and then go down to Move, because now we know the folder is there. File and Move, and then go to Frames and Borders, and it's appeared here, and click on it, and then click Move. And then it will say my untitled design, which is really has a title to it. It just hasn't thought itself through yet. So it really does have a title on it. So now it's in there. So let's just make sure that it is in there. And here's the folders. And there it's frames and borders, and it shows that it has one item in there. It's just not showing you the picture yet because it's got to think about it, I guess. But there we are. It's got all 3 pages. See, it says 1 of 3. It has all 3 of them. And so it will, you can open a new tab, you can do details, you can move it to somewhere else, take it out of the folder, or whatever you want to do. If you click on it, it will open it back up, but we already have it open anyway, so we don't want to do that. Okay, so it is there. In this video, we learned about frames and borders, as well as adding pages to a whiteboard. We learned how to download our own images to Canva. We also learned how to create a new folder for our project. Compare the frames and borders to what I did in the Affinity Photo 2 video. I'll attach those videos at the end of this one if you want to refresh your memory or if you haven't seen them. Please subscribe to my channel as I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers. I honestly don't know if anything wonderful happens then, but I just think it would really be awesome. Also check out my Buy Me a Coffee page to check out my latest posts. I've also started uploading some of my designs to Spreadshirt to use on their products. Who knew that a retired science teacher could become artsy? That just shows that if this old lady can learn something new, so can you.